In the last stream, we were working on setting up our first bits of automation using the Pretty Pipes mod. We set up this pipe right here with 2 low crafting modules, allowing our Pretty Pipes network to automatically craft both tin and copper gears, showing that we can use this mod to automate our machinery going forward. And we also set up this tier 3 crafter right here using the ender chest and our storage drawer system to allow us to automatically craft a bunch of different items, most importantly, the machine frames, the pipes themselves, and the low crafting modules to allow us to hopefully, in the future, very rapidly expand out our crafting network. And along those lines, what I've gone ahead and done between streams is crafted another one of these tier 3 crafters. I've placed it down right here. I do want to point out right from the get-go that by the end of today's stream, both of these crafters will be moved to a new location. I know this is horrible. I know this looks janky as all heck, but we're going to move it all and we're going to have a nice organized area full of tier 3 crafters because in here, I've taught the system how to make tier 3 crafters as well as how to make all of the requisite parts for that tier 3 crafter. So it knows how to make the tier 2 and tier 1 crafters, and of course to make those, it needs redstone torches, it needs sequential fabricators, the sequential fabricator needs redstone flux coils, and then the oak planks are for the crafting tables, which we have taught over here, because occasionally we do run out of planks, and when that happens, the system needs to know how to make more planks, and then finally we also have sticks as well. Again, same idea. In order to make redstone torches, we need sticks. When we run out of sticks, we need to be able to craft them from the planks from the logs. So I think that we're pretty much good to go here. I've put in all of the requisite crafting modules around this crafter to allow it to craft all of the different items. We did have to make our first high crafting module. That's the tier 3 crafting module right here, because the sequential fabricator requires more than 4 inputs, and so we did need a tier 3 module for that. Now, there is one thing that we can do here to make this slightly more efficient. It's something that was mentioned a little bit in the YouTube comments, and I wanted to cover it here just so that people are aware. So in these crafters, there's a little button here that says EXT, and by default, it means that the results of the crafting operation will go to the output buffer. And so basically what that means is that when we craft a tier 1 crafter, it's going to go to this orange slot here and then be extracted down into our ender chest, sent around to be used however we want to use it. However, you can change this to results of crafting operation will stay in the input buffer. And if you do that and hit apply, it means that the tier 1 crafter here, instead of going to the output buffer, will simply stay in the input buffer. It'll go back to this blue area here, ready to be crafted again. Now, we could have done something like that over here. For example, these stone slabs are required to make the blank modules. The way it currently works is the system makes stone slabs, sends them round to the ender chest, through into their own storage drawer, and then the pipes network has to pull them back around into the same crafter to use them to make blank modules. That might seem a little redundant, and if we wanted to, we could have changed this to have the stone slabs just go directly into this input buffer. The only problem with that is that if we do that, because we make more stone slabs than each blank module needs, eventually this is going to fill up with stone slabs. Because we make 6, but only need 2. So the other 4 are just going to sit here, and then the next time we need a blank module, the Pretty Pipes network will just send more stone, and we'll end up with more slabs backing up in this system. So I don't think it's a particularly good option for something like the stone slabs. However, it is probably a fairly good option for the crafters here, because what we should be able to do is kind of cut down on the number of crafting modules required by having the tier 1 and tier 2 crafters stay in the system. Because for things like the stone slabs, it's quite possible that there might be another crafting recipe in the future that needs those stone slabs, and so having them in our storage drawers is good for us. However, I don't think we're ever going to craft a tier 1 or tier 2 crafter. I think there's no reason for us to not always go for a tier 3 crafter. So what we should probably do is change the tier 1 crafter recipe to go to the input slot, hit apply, change the tier 2 recipe to go to the input slot, apply, and then let me just check over here. I'm pretty sure this doesn't change until you hit apply, but just in case, I'm going to hit apply there. And then in here, what we can then do is we can kind of condense all 3 of these down, these being the tier 1, 2, and 3 crafter. We can condense all of these down to just one recipe, because we can tell the system that if you send 6 redstone torches, 6 sequential fabricators, and then 1 machine frame, it will make a tier 3 crafter, right? So let's give that a try. I think we have a machine frame in here. We totally do. Fantastic. Can I change the amounts in here? Let me take 2 of these out. Actually, we'll take out the ones for the tier 1 and tier 2 crafter. I can't change those. Okay, that is fine. In that case, can I have 6 redstone torches? And I guess 6 sequential fabricators? This might take a second to go through, but it should work. We should have, I think, everything it takes to make this happen. Of course, the multi-servo press here is going to take quite a large amount of time at its current speed. We could definitely do with getting some more of those integral components to make it just that little bit faster. There are also flux linkage amplifiers, these guys right here. These increase the processing speed, but reduce redstone flux efficiency. It might not be a terrible idea for us to look at getting some of these. We have lead, and we have the ability to make electrum. That would allow us to make machines like the multi-servo press that bit faster without having to use our time in a bottle. Although at the same time, we do have over 8 hours in our time in a bottle now, and so putting all this together really shouldn't be too big of a deal. So I think we have a slight problem here. And I think that problem is iron bars. I had this problem between streams. I looked in here and I was wondering why it wasn't making the machine frames, and I'm wondering why it's not sending the iron. But I think what's happening is that the iron is being sent in bulk. We've just requested 6 machine frames, so it's just sent 20 iron. But then instead of using that to make machine frames, it's used it to make iron bars. So what we might have to do is we might have to get rid of that recipe, and it's not going to be a problem. It's just going to mean that in the future we have to move that to a separate crafter and be a bit more mindful about where we put certain recipes like that. For now, we can do something like this. That's going to take a bunch of iron and make us those machine frames. We just need to be careful that little crossovers like that don't occur. And there we go. Our sequential fabricators have arrived. So if we take these over and we take our requested redstone torches, what we should be able to do over in here is set this recipe to 6 sequential fabricators and 6 redstone torches along with 1 machine frame. If these 3 items are sent, then in here, the first 2 sequential fabricators and 2 redstone torches will be used with the machine frame to make the tier 1 crafter. The tier 1 crafter will go back into the input slot, triggering the next recipe. That's this one here, which will use sequential fabricators 3 and 4, along with torches 3 and 4. And then at that point, that will make the tier 2 crafter, which will trigger the tier 3 crafting recipe. That will use sequential fabricators 5 and 6, along with redstone torches 5 and 6, to make the tier 3 crafter. And so essentially, all of that was just to give us a few extra slots here and to be more efficient on our crafting modules, but also to show how we can use this feature of allowing to send outputs to the input buffer to streamline our setup. It's also going to be faster as well. So I'm thinking, chat, that what I would like to do here is set up a fairly large array of these crafters and set them all up with pretty pipes and crafting modules, so that going forward, whenever we want to teach our system how to craft something, we don't have to go through the whole rigmarole of making another crafter and making more pretty pipes. So I'm thinking of setting a platform up over here, and I think we'll start with maybe like 25 tier 3 crafters. We already have 2 of them, and I do want to move those as well. So let's see if we can't request maybe 23 tier 3 crafters and see if that works. I think it should work. I don't think there's really anything that we don't have enough of. I did do a bit of smelting between streams, so we have a fair bit of iron, gold, and copper lying around. I just used the advanced smelting factory to get a bunch of those going. I did get 1 tier 3 crafter here. The reason for that is that I've messed up. I've not taught the system how to make these machine frames. Thankfully, we did just get rid of the iron bar recipe, and so we can quickly encode that there, and then wherever the iron bar recipe is, we can just replace that with a machine frame encode. Now, the system doesn't know how to make the blue dye, and so for now, at least, I will go ahead and do something like this. Again, in the future, we will teach our system how to make that blue dye, but for the time being, let's see if we can't once again request 22 more crafters. Alright, so it took a little bit of time, mostly due to the fact that I massively underestimated the amount of resources required to make this happen. We needed a ton of copper and a ton of tin that we just didn't have, and so I did have to go and manually smelt quite a lot of copper and quite a lot of tin to make sure that we could get this craft done. But we now have 23 tier 3 crafters, including the 2 that we have down here, for a total of 25 tier 3 crafters. And so now, chat, my plan is to build a new platform out over here. And I think that I'm probably going to start, like, I want to redo a lot of the platform here. This platform is quite cramped. I want to expand out. I want to build some much bigger, larger contraptions. I want areas for much more storage drawers, you know, much more pipes. We need a whole area for machines because we don't have that much space here for these machines. And so I kind of want to start with a bit of a new base look. And I think that I'm going to use some white concrete for like a kind of a futuristic factory vibe, at least for the floor. And then we can figure out the rest as we go here. So thankfully, I don't think the concrete should be too difficult for us to get. We do have the ability to make a lot of sand and gravel very easily using our crusher, and we also have unlimited white dye because we can get it from bone meal, which we can get from bones which have an EMC, and then we do have our encased fan over here that we can use to wash a stack of concrete powder at a time into concrete, which should make getting a large amount of concrete fairly easy. So I think what we'll do, we've got our crusher here. I think step 1 is I'm going to get a factory installer. Let me hit request there, so that we can upgrade this crusher to its factory variant. I think we also might have what it takes to make the tier 2 version as soon as we craft some of the tier 2 circuits. So if I could get 2 of these, infused alloy not found. That is because it's in here. Let me drop those into a chest. Now let's try that again. 1, 2, and 1, 2. And as soon as that's back in a storage drawer, we should be able to request this guy right here, at which point we should be able to upgrade our crusher to a tier 1, and then, whoops, and then a tier 2 factory. Again, if you're too close, the carry-on mod lets you pick up the crusher, which is nice if you want to move the crusher, but if you don't, it's less than ideal. So you do have to be close, but not too close. Close enough to shift-click it on, but not too close to pick it up with carry-on. Either way, now that that's done, I'm going to temporarily steal these speed and energy upgrades from here. We'll drop those in like so, and then we should just be able to grab some cobblestone from our transmutation table, drop those into here, and of course turn auto sort on. That's going to produce a bunch of gravel for us. We can then take all of that gravel and turn it into sand, and once we have a decent amount of gravel and sand, we can then combine all of that into some white concrete powder. I'll go ahead and bookmark that. And then we can just throw that onto the depot by our encased fan, give that a quick crank, and we should get a fairly large amount of concrete. I do want to make a very large platform here, though, because if we're going to get 25 of these crafters down, with a bit of space between each crafter for us to be able to move through it, we're going to need quite a large platform. All right, so we've got 9 stacks of white concrete, and down here I was just doing a little bit of testing as to how far apart I wanted these crafters to be. And so we're going to work from the front backwards here because we might end up needing more white concrete than we currently have. But let's grab our diamond wand. This is going to make it very easy for us to put down a large amount of the white concrete here. And then what we'll do is we'll go maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Because I think I'm going to redo this platform, but then I would like to have a little bit of a walkway over to this platform as well. So let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 this way. And we'll do the same here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That's going to give us 23 blocks of width. And then let's see how we want to get this set up. So I'm thinking of having a crafter down. Let's say we put our first crafter right here. We're going to put it, actually, right here. So then we want to have some pretty pipes, which I'm going to request, actually. Do we have what it takes? The answer is probably no to request a large amount of pretty pipes. Like if I want to request a stack of pretty pipes. Oh, it says sending 64, so I assume we're going to get these 4 and it's going to make 60 more. I was a little worried we might not have enough glass to make that happen, but the Pretty Pipes network seems somewhat confident. Look at that. Fantastic. 64. You'll love to see it. So over here, we're going to have 3 pipes going into each crafter like this. And that's going to be for all of the crafting modules, right? We can put 3 in each pipe. That gives us 9 total. We only need 8, but that's perfect. Then I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to have pipes going out of the bottom. Do we have any logistical transporters left? We do. They're in here, of course. So we're going to have all of our crafters extract to the bottom like that. And I think what we'll do is we'll have all of these advanced logistical transporters connected up to one centralized ender chest underneath the platform, right? Then I want to have a gap at the side here. So I do want to have a gap between them. And then I think we'll have the next one, I guess, here, like that. We're going to have the same 2 pipes coming up out of the floor. We'll have the crafter like this, and we'll have our pipes going around like that. And my plan here is to basically make a 5x5 grid of crafters like this. So this here was a 3-block gap, so we'll do 1, 2, 3, and then gap, 1, 2, 3, and then gap, and then over here we'll do the same. We'll do 1, 2, 3, and then hole in the ground like that. So I've got to be careful with this morning star. It's far too powerful, but this should be pretty much good to go. I'm going to temporarily put cobblestone in here where the advanced logistical transporters are going to go, just so that I can get these crafters down. And then we're going to do the same, but all the way back. So we're going to have 5 rows of 5 crafters to get all 25 down. So we've got almost all of these down. The good news is that these crafters that we have already configured, they do retain their knowledge when you break and replace them. So we can break this guy. He's going to go back at the corner here, like so. And then this was the one we had before. You'll see it's retained all of its information, as has this one right here. So we can do this and put pretty pipes around all of it, like so. And then we can, of course, place back in the crafting module. So these 3, and these 3 were for this guy. And then over here, it is just these 3 and these 3. We only have 6 for now, and that's perfect. So all of these down, they're not all covered with pipes yet. That is still something that we need to do. But this is the general premise. And I think what we might do is, I know I've made 25 of these, but I'm thinking I might actually take away this central one here, and I might have this be where the pipe kind of comes in, like this. Because of course the pipe needs to connect to our draw controller, which I might run underneath the platform here. And then I think what we'll do is we'll connect these together like this. So we'll connect each row up like this, and then we'll probably run that from the side as well like this. So we'll have these run across. So all the items are going to come from our storage network over here, which again, we are going to move at some point in the near future, but they're going to come across, they're going to go up through to here, and then they're either going to go left, right, up, or down, depending on which kind of area of pipage they want to go to. And then we'll run this over this way, like so. And then obviously these are going to go, you know, here and here, but then we'll also run this down like this. So we'll have a bunch of lines of pretty pipes running around like that. All right, so this is getting there. We have all 24 of our crafters down, and they're all connected up to the pretty pipe network. I've run that down underneath and along like so. I've left a 1-block wide gap here because, of course, we do need to be able to extract from these logistical transporters round into the ender chest. I think what we'll do is we'll grab the ender chest. We'll also grab these logistical transporters, and we'll probably have the ender chest go somewhere around here. I think we do need to make sure, though, that the ender chest doesn't touch the pipe, because if the ender chest touches the pipe, then the pipe's going to start extracting or inserting into that ender chest. So I think that's fine. I think we can put it here, and then we can just use the pipe wrench to disconnect here and here so that it never touches the ender chest. And then we can just have all of the pipes run, all of the logistical transporter pipes run over into that ender chest and send items back around into our storage drawers. Now, before we get started with the logistical transporters, one problem that we're going to run into is power. Right now, there's no power for any of these. And so I think it's probably not going to be a terrible time for us to look at getting into the Flux Networks mod. Especially as we expand our base out to be much larger than it currently is, Flux Networks is going to become much more useful to us. It's a mod that's going to allow us to wirelessly transfer our power from one point to another without running a ton of cables from point A to point B. There is a quest for it. It's right here. It says, after crafting your first flux block with a more expensive alternative recipe, you can get more flux indefinitely by throwing redstone dust on top of a flux block and placing a block of obsidian on top of it. Left-clicking it with your hand only, the obsidian is consumed. So this is the more expensive recipe. It's 4 blocks of redstone, 1 regular mechanical essence, and then 4 obsidian dust, which we can get with the enrichment chamber. Nice. Okay, so let's get some obsidian. We do have an enrichment chamber over here. We definitely could do with getting another general purpose machine for for everyday use like this, but temporarily we can hijack this one. And you in fact do get 4 at a time there, which is fantastic. 4 is all that we're going to need. We do also need to hijack one of these guys here. Fantastic. One of these regular mechanical essences. Once we have that, I think we should be basically good to go. Let me bookmark the flux block here. And now we're just missing 4 blocks of redstone, which is fine. Let's grab a stack of redstone. Let's do something like this. Let's grab 1, 2, 3, 4 blocks. And at that point, chat, that's everything we need to get the flux block. Nice. And then as the quest book suggests, all you have to do now is take obsidian, place the flux block down. You place the obsidian 1 block above the flux block, like this, and then you can throw redstone underneath that obsidian. And I believe you can do really as much redstone as you like. I'm going to take, let's say, 2 stacks of redstone. And we'll throw those 2 stacks of redstone onto the flux block. Like this. We'll throw the 16 that we had as well. There we go. Then you just left-click on the obsidian. And boom, it turns the redstone into flux dust. Pretty cool stuff. The obsidian is consumed, it's turned into cobblestone, but you can do the exact same thing again. You just need to put another piece of obsidian in the same spot, and we can leave that there for when we need more dust in the future. So now, to get started with the Flux Networks mod, we need 2 things. We need at least 1 flux plug, and then at least 1 flux point. So the flux plug is made with the flux block that we just saw, along with 4 flux cores. The flux cores are kind of the core of the Flux Networks mod. We need quite a few of these, and this is almost certainly something that we're going to want to automate with our Pretty Pipe system, of course, just as soon as these guys have some power. So to make the flux cores, we need 4 flux dust, 4 obsidian, and an Eye of Ender. The Eye of Ender we can make with the Ender Pearls that we get from the Philosopher's Stone, and then the blaze powder we can, of course, get using the blaze rods, which we get from those blaze effigies. So I think we are going to want to make quite a few blaze effigies here, because I don't think we currently have any blaze powder. We do not. Alright, so 16 blaze effigies later, we've got 16 blaze rods, and now we can pulverize those to get quite a lot of blaze powder. So let's stick those in there, and temporarily, let's just steal this guy and throw him in as well. Fantastic. We're going to need a lot of blaze powder, though, because I think we're going to need quite a lot of flux points. But let's see here. Chat did remind me that we do have Ender Pearls, so we don't have to craft those with our Philosopher's Stone. Let's make some Eyes of Ender, and let's make some flux cores. I'm going to grab like a stack or 2 of obsidian here, just so that we are prepared. So we'll start by crafting 16 Eyes of Ender, sure. And then let's see if we can't craft this flux block. Now, I honestly think it might be easier for us to just craft another flux block the same way we crafted it the first time. Again, simply due to the fact that we don't have that much in the way of blaze powder. And especially given that this recipe here for the obsidian really isn't that expensive. We can dump the coal ore, of course, back into the transmutation tablet. Nothing is lost there. And then we can dump the coal just back in the system to be used in the future. Redstone we've got in abundance. And of course, we can make more as and when we need it. We could definitely do with putting our redstone into a compacting drawer. Much like with the ingots, that would give us access to the redstone in block form without having to craft it like we just did. The only thing we're missing there is this guy. I'll steal that real quick, and then we'll do another one of these. Now we just need some flux cores, which we can make. Again, we'll make quite a few of these. We'll start with 32, and we'll see where it goes from there. Now we can make a flux plug, and then for the flux point, it's the same again, but just with a block of redstone instead of that flux block. Fantastic. And the idea here is that we can place the flux plug down where our power is generated. So for example, we can put the flux plug down right about here. We can then open it up, and in the top right, we want to click Create New Network. By default, it's going to be called GamingOnCaffeine's Network. I think that's fine. We'll change the color to this light pink and put in any password you like. It really doesn't matter. You don't need to use this password going forward. Everything will just work right out of the gate. Once you've done that, we can click on our network, GamingOnCaffeine's Network, and we have now set this flux plug to our network. So power is now able to go into this flux plug. All we need to do now is on the other end of the network, we need to put down a flux point. So let's say all the way at the back here, these 2 crafters are the ones that actually have stuff in them. These are the ones we've already configured with all of our recipes. In here, we want to click this little blank box at the top, select GamingOnCaffeine's Network, and now this is connected to our network, and you'll see this has filled up with power. In fact, these are already full up with power. So let me do this one, and then let me show you over here. This one is empty. We can put down the flux point, we can connect it to our network, and it's going to pull power from that flux plug and send it wirelessly over to this tier 3 crafter. So I think in an ideal world here, we want to have 24 flux points, one on each crafter. Obviously, you can, if you want, put down energy pipes between these. So if we were to grab them out of our backpack, you can just run power from these like this. That does work, but I think it's going to look cleaner and neater if we just craft up a ton of these flux points. Chat is correct. There is one last little thing that we can do that's going to make our lives a little easier here, and that is make the flux configurator. This is not too expensive, more of the same stuff, but what this allows you to do is basically copy and paste the configuration of your flux points. So if I were to go and put these 4 flux points down, let's say here, 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 and here, what we can do is we can copy this configuration. So real quick, I'm going to set this to bypass limit. That's going to allow it to bypass this transfer limit. Not that it's going to matter. We're not going to be using more than 800,000 redstone flux per tick anytime soon. But now what we can do is we can shift right click onto here to copy the configuration. And then we can just right click on all of these to automatically set them to our network and to bypass limit, which is pretty cool. So I'm going to quickly see if we can't craft up a bunch more of these flux points and get them all configured to our network. And then we have it. All of these are now hooked up to power. And so the final step of the process is just to get a bunch of logistical transporters. The question really now is how far we want to go with the logistical transporters, because we could make a ton of basic ones fairly easily. And in fact, this is a good chance for us to test our pipe network. Can I request a stack of pipes? We might not have enough glass, but never mind, we totally do. We should see things getting shot over here. Look at that, it's being sent over. You'll have to see it. And then we should see pipes getting sent back as well. Obviously, this is not going to work. That's my bad. It's not going to work because these don't have anywhere to go just yet, because the whole point is that we need the logistical transporters. But we can cancel that craft, and we did get the pipes. But we can now use those, of course, to craft our basic logistical transporters. The question is whether or not we want to upgrade them to these higher tiers. Obviously, the higher tier we go, the faster the items are going to move through the system, and just the faster our auto crafting is going to be in general. I think what we'll do is, I think we have a few alloys here. We do. We've got 8 of them, which is going to allow us to make 64 of these advanced logistical transporters, which I think is going to be fine. We'll start with those for now, because what's nifty about the mechanism pipes is that you can upgrade them in the future without having to pick them up. You can just right-click the infused alloy onto the pipes and it will upgrade them. For example, down here, we have these basic universal cables. If I just right-click with the infused alloy, it upgrades 8 of them to advanced universal cable. And they do connect to the lower tier very easily. So I think what we'll do is we'll just put down the advanced for now, and then in the future, once we have some more reinforced alloy and some atomic alloy, we can always go around and upgrade them by just right-clicking in the future. All right, so all of these pipes are down, and so now it's just a case of grabbing our configurator. I'm going to make a point of putting everything back in here when we're not using it, but let's grab our configurator and let's quickly set all of these to extract. All right, I think that finally, chat, we have done it. We have got all of this set up. I guess the only thing we don't have is the crafting modules, right? Although our system does know how to make them. And so now going forward, if we do want to auto-craft something, we can request some crafting modules, place them into a crafter, teach that crafter that recipe, and it's good to go. And speaking of which, I think the next thing that I'd like to work on, I guess first of all, is getting rid of this monstrosity that's going above the base here. Just make sure we're not going to break anything essential. Fantastic. And then we can get rid of these horrible pipes as well that are coming out of the floor. Again, a lot of what's here is going to be replaced fairly soon. I think most of what is here, in terms of the floor at least, is going to be replaced somewhat soon. But now, what I want to work towards is the auto-processing of ores. I talked a little bit in the last stream about this overhauled ore processing, and I think that we can fairly easily get 10x ore processing up and running. So this was a little tricky for me to figure out initially, but it's actually fairly simple once you get your head around it. So there are a couple of different machines that we can use to process our ores, and they're kind of split into 2 sections. The first section is before this tick box here, and that's the left side, and then the section after that is these 3 here. So all of these here are pulverizer catalysts. Basically, if you place a catalyst into this slot right here in the pulverizer, it will modify the way the pulverizer behaves. The simplest catalyst is flint. If you put flint into the pulverizer, like this, it will give you a primary modifier of 1.1x, which basically means that you can multiply the default behavior of the pulverizer by 1.1x. After that, there's the mechanism crusher and there's the crushing wheels. And basically, the initial setup before you get to this mark here is that you can run your ores through the crushing wheels. That's going to multiply it by 1.3. So for every ore that you put in, you get approximately 1.3 crushed iron out. You can then put that crushed iron ore into the crusher from mechanism, and that's going to multiply that 1.3 by 2. And so all you have to do there is just multiply the 1.3 by the 2. So already we've managed to 2.6x our ores. Then you get to pick your catalyst. I think the catalyst that we're going to go with is probably the earth charge. These ones further down are a bit more expensive. We definitely can get them at some point in the future, but initially, I think we'll go with the earth charge because we have to automate these for the next tier of mechanical essence anyway, and so automating them for our ore processing, I think, is just going to make sense. So that's going to give us a 1.5x multiplier, and then we also have the 1.2x multiplier. And so the way that you figure it out is you just multiply all of the steps together that you're using if you're before this tick box. So we do 1.3 multiplied by 2, multiplied by 1.5, multiplied by 1.2. That would effectively be 4.7x ore processing. But we can take it one step further, and we can use the purification chamber to double that again to get us 9.4-ish x ore processing, which I'm going to round up and call 10x ore processing. The reason that this section here is split from this section is because of this quest. It says the multiplication values for the purification chamber, chemical injection chamber, and chemical crystallizer apply only if you begin the process from there. Basically, you cannot multiply these values together, although you can do that for the steps before these. So these ones here you can multiply together. These ones you can't. You basically pick where you want to start. You do then have to work backwards. So if you start at the purification chamber, you go from the purification chamber into the crushing wheels, into the crusher, into the pulverizer, and then you smelt it. Alternatively, if you want to get more, you can start with the chemical injection chamber. You do still have to run through the purification chamber, but unlike here, where you get the 1.3x and then the 1.2x, over here, you get the 2.66x, but then you don't get this 2x, but then you do get the 1.3x, 2x, 1.5x, and 1.2x, if that makes sense. So essentially, at the end here, if you want the maximum ore processing, you can use the chemical dissolution chamber, then the chemical injection chamber, then the purification chamber, then the crushing wheel, then the crusher, then the pulverizer, then a furnace of some persuasion. If you do that, you will get almost 25x processing. The way it works is that the chemical dissolution chamber gives you 3.33x. Then that 3.33x skips these two. You do have to use these, but these don't multiply if you're using the chemical injection chamber. So then you go right through to the crushing wheel after these two. The crushing wheel then multiplies that 3.33x by 1.3. That's going to get you to 4.3. Then you multiply by 2 for the crusher. Then, if you want to maximize your outputs, you use this enriched basalic reagent, which is going to multiply by 2.5. And then finally, you multiply that by 1.2. And that gets you to the 25x ore processing that is advertised over in here. 25 ingots per ore. So that's how that works. Basically, everything here you can multiply depending on which path you choose. Again, you can only pick one of these at a time. You can't put more than one in. But then over here, you have to pick one of these that you want to use the multiplying effect of. As you go further up, it gets harder and harder, of course, because, for example, here at the very end, you can put your raw iron into a chemical dissolution chamber first. That's going to get you dirty iron slurry that you can then make into clean iron slurry that you can then make into iron crystals that you can then run through the chemical injection chamber, then the purification chamber, then the crushing wheels, then the crusher, then the pulverizer, and then some kind of furnace. So that's the full stage. Again, we're not going to do that just yet. We're going to start with the purification chamber because going from the 10x that we're going to do to the 25x that you can do is a pretty big jump in complexity, especially when you start working with the chemical injection chamber and the chemical dissolution chamber, because like you just saw, the chemical dissolution chamber involves slurries and a whole host of other machines that we don't currently have access to. So for us, basically, all we need a pulverizer, which we have, we need a crusher, which we have, we need crushing wheels, which we have, and the only thing we're missing is a purification chamber. this guy right here. Thankfully, it's pretty easy to make. It does require an enrichment chamber, but again, that should not be a problem for us. Let us, once again, steal some more steel dust out of here and get that smelting in there. Can I request a steel casing? I can. Fantastic. We'll craft that. Good stuff. We'll send it back. Then let's go ahead and see if we can't request 2 of these circuits. We're missing infused alloy. That is fine. We have 15 of those available to us, so let's drop those in there, and let's request 2 of these, 1 and 2. That should be everything for the enrichment chamber. Request. It is indeed. I'm going to steal that steel as well, and we'll drop that back in here for now. Again, at some point, we'll get a draw for all that kind of stuff. We can send the enrichment chamber back, and then we just need 2 more of those advanced circuits. 1, 2, and that should also be everything for the purification chamber. Nice. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up a new platform. Now, again, what I'll probably do between streams is set up a new platform, maybe over here, but also potentially just next to one of these for this processing. For now, just to show you guys how it works, I'm going to set up a somewhat horrible looking cobblestone platform. It doesn't need to be super wide, but what we'll do is we'll get our diamond wand out and we'll just make this a little bit bigger so I can show off the processing that I want to run through. So we're going to have an EMC link. Do we have an EMC link lying around? We do. Fantastic. It doesn't really matter that it's a basic EMC link. I think 1 item per second is going to be fine. So we'll have this here. That EMC link is going to pump into the purification chamber. And in fact, what I'm going to do here, I'm going to move this. We'll put the purification chamber here, and we'll put the EMC link, let's say right about here, right? Let's say we set that to raw iron, which we can get from our transmutation tablet. We're going to put that in here. That's going to extract down and into the purification chamber. From there, we need to go into the crushing wheels, because the purification chamber is going to produce us these iron clumps. Those iron clumps need to go into the crushing wheels. Now, as I was told in the YouTube comments, you can actually place these crushing wheels down horizontally, like flat to the ground. And if we were to do something like this and like this, no, that's not right. I'm going to push these back by 1. We're going to have them like this and like this. Because what you can actually do is you can just set the purification chamber to output to the right, and if you turn auto eject on, it will push the iron pieces directly into the crushing wheels. Now, for whatever reason, the next stage of the process is the crusher. Again, temporarily we'll steal this crusher, but we'll probably make a new crusher when we actually come to putting this in its final location, because we don't need a crushing factory, just a regular crusher is fine. So we can place this down. Unfortunately, you can't push directly into the crusher, like the wheels won't push. So we'll have to put that 1 block away and then use something like a hopper to cover the middle bit there. For whatever reason, a hopper works, like the crushing wheels can push into a hopper, but they can't push into the crusher. So if we do this, now the iron ore goes into the purification chamber, gets turned into iron clumps. The iron clumps get crushed by the crushing wheel. That's going to turn them into iron pieces. The iron pieces then get crushed in the crushing factory. That gets you dirty iron dust. Then we just need to take it from the crushing factory into the pulverizer. Again, let's steal you for now and put that down right about here. Then from the pulverizer, we go over and into some kind of furnace. Again, for now, we could steal the advanced smelting factory here just to show how this works. But again, when we actually set it up, we'll definitely go with just a regular energized smelter because we don't need too much more. So let's see here. Now, over here, the purification chamber does require oxygen. If we look here, you'll see that it says oxygen is required. We are definitely going to have to set up a way of generating oxygen in a more automated way, but just again to show the proof of concept here, you can put flint into the purification chamber and that will work. Before I do that, I'm going to quickly steal the electric motor that is here, and we're going to use that. Gosh, the Morningstar is too powerful. I've broken my multi-servo press. Let's put that back down and hope that that just starts to work again. The configuration is saved, so that's fine. Let's steal this and let's put that down over here. My plan in the long run is going to be to have more electric motors and to place those underneath the crushing wheels. I think that is going to be our best bet. For now, though, what we can do is we can place down one of these. Obviously, I want this in vertical mode. But if we place this down ideally this way. We can put the alternator on top of it, like so, and we can put a flux point down next to it. That's going to give it some power. And using our configurator, we can right-click to set that to our network. Fantastic. That is working just fine. I do think then that we're going to need a few things. We're going to need some more shaft, and we're going to need another gearbox. If I do... Actually, we don't need more shaft. If I do this... Not dying now, Isaac. If I do this and this... That doesn't work, so I am going to need a shaft, because we want these rotating in different directions. So do I have a single shaft? I do. I have just the one shaft. So we'll put that down right about here, and those are now spinning counterclockwise, which is great. So in here, we can put the flint in. The Twitch chat is correct in that what we can do as well is we can put these gas upgrades into the purification chamber. These are going to lower the amount of oxygen required per ore processed. Right now, it is 200 millibuckets of oxygen per raw iron. If we put these in, that should go down substantially. One piece of flint only gets you 10 millibuckets. So let's see here. If I put 2 of those in, that's not going to work. Not enough energy to operate, of course. Let's do this and this. Look at that. So this here has a 10x effect. So it's basically taken the amount of oxygen down from 200 millibuckets to 10 millibuckets, which is fantastic. So this should get auto-ejected into the crushing wheels. Over here, this just needs to be set to input from the left, which it is. It did eject. You can hear it. It's processing. There's the dirty iron dust. And look at that already. We put 1 raw iron in, and we've got 6 dirty iron dust out. Now, before we go to the pulverizer, do we have some earth charges? We do. Let's take a few of those, and let's put those into the pulverizer. Thankfully, these are not always used. You'll see here, there's only a 38% use chance. So most of the time, this is not going to be used, but it is going to multiply the output by 1.5. So I'll put these in, like so, and then we'll set the output to the right, make sure you are set to input on the left, and we'll turn auto eject here on. That's going to push those over. Again, we have 6 dirty iron. That should get processed into more than 6 iron dust. It did. We got 8 iron dust out of that process, and it used, I think, 2 of our earth charges there. And then over here, we can make sure this is set to input on the left. We can set the pulverizer to output on the right with auto eject on. That should push this over to here. And again, these do require power. So let's do this and this. Of course, this is just a proof of concept chat. This is not going to be how this looks when it's finally done. We're going to try and clean it up quite a bit and make it look a lot more presentable. But what we've effectively managed to do there is multiply our 1 raw iron into 8 iron ingots. Now, it is going to be quite variable because a lot of this is chance-based, right? The purification chamber is a guaranteed 2x. The crusher is also a guaranteed 2x, but everything else is a chance. The crushing wheel has a 1.3x output, which means that 33% of the time we're going to get an extra output, but 66% of the time we're not going to get an output. And then the thermal expansion pulverizer has a 1.8x output, and so we're always guaranteed to get 1, and then sometimes, 80% of the time we'll get 2, 20% of the time we'll get 1. And so sometimes this system will only output a couple of iron. Like sometimes we'll get, it'll double here, and it'll double here, and that'll be it. Sometimes you'll just get 4 for 1, but sometimes it will double here, then it will double here, so you'll go from 2 to 4, then you'll go from 4 to 8, and then you'll go from 8, you can go from 8 to 16. So this can output 16, it can also output 4. The average is like 9.5, and so approximately 10 iron per ore. We do need to automate the production of oxygen. We'll do that next time. And we also need to multiply this system. We need 1 of these for every resource that we want to fully automate. And by my calculation, I think there are 11 ingots that we want to process. There's iron, copper, gold, aluminum, silver, lead, tin. Down here we have zinc. There's also osmium, and then finally uranium. I think those 11 are what we want to process and automate. For that, we're going to need a lot more crushing wheels, but most importantly, we're going to need a lot more power. And so I think before we can really start working on setting all of this up, we are going to have to look at upgrading our power system, because right now I just don't think we have what it takes to run 11 of these systems at a reasonable speed. The good news is that none of these have secondary outputs, so there's no chance of us ending up with different bits of stuff from the dirty iron, for example, that's going to back up the system, which is fantastic. But this is basically how we are going to automate things. I'll probably almost definitely end up moving these gearboxes underneath. And in fact, we probably won't even use gearboxes, because what we can do is, as well, is if we get more alternators, you can just put down 1 alternator and my inventory is so full here. Let me dump some stuff into the storage drawers. But the alternator can go down on one wheel and be set to 32, but you can also set it to negative 32. And so we can just have one electric motor that is spinning the wheel one way and another electric motor that has it spinning the other way. I think that's going to be the easiest way for us to do that. And of course, we can move things potentially like the EMC link and the energy pipes all underground to make this look a little bit nicer. And I think ideally we're going to have just a big long platform. Potentially we might do it over here actually, because it needs to be real wide. If we're going to have 11 of these, this setup is 5 blocks wide. So we would need like a 60 block wide platform to have 11 of these all next to each other. But I think this is a pretty simple and straightforward setup. And the idea is that we can, of course, use our EMC links to pull the raw ores out, and then we can have all of the ingots go into their corresponding compacting drawers. We will get a compacting drawer for every ingot, and once we have all of that set up, the system will run until the compacting drawer is full, and then once the compacting drawer is full, the system will stop. And then as soon as iron is used, the system will kick back into gear, make more ingots for us, send them to the compacting drawer, and the whole cycle will repeat. For now though, chat, I think that is about where we're going to have to wrap things up for today's stream. Next time we'll come back, we'll probably look initially at setting up some more power. We'll also potentially look at doing a bit more automation work and getting some more recipes automated. Ideally, we want to have, I think, most of these automated so we can just request the pulverizers, the energized smelters, the crushers, and the crushing wheels so that we don't have to keep crafting those for every single resource that we want to automatically process. Like I said, power is going to be a big part of that. And once we have the power and the automation, then we can look at setting all of those up. And once we have a good foundational source of resource generation, then we can start looking at automating these essences. The improved mechanical essence is not going to be too difficult, but moving forward towards the end game, we are going to need a lot of resources, and having all of this automated is going to make our lives a whole heck of a lot easier. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up today's stream there.